So I'm going to talk about the track memory and how I recorded piano in it, and then also just everything else that's in the track. We'll go through the live session. And I'm going to start with the piano parts. As usual, I did a bunch of takes and ended up using the takes in sort of a way that I learned from working with tape. And I actually had planned to originally go to tape with these, but it just never ended up making sense to do so because they were sounding good. So the whole track's based around what I played on the piano. Here's what that sounds like in its original form. So that's how I played it. But in actual usage, I took both of these stereo tracks and took it down an octave. I love what that does, both to the tone of the piano, but also how it impacts the way the performance sounds, sort of like gives it a certain relaxedness and almost hallucinogenic quality. So there are two instances of the piano, and much like my track Still Hold from a couple albums ago, all the material in this track is actually the same thing. It's the same set of chords, just on different time scales. And so the actual first piano track is this one, which this is how it sounded as recorded. So I played it 2 octaves up from where I wanted to use it, and also it's, I guess, 4 times as fast. So I used it pitched 2 octaves down, which sounds like this. Then I'll take those and put them in their actual tracks, which are going to have the effects and compressors I used. Click on the group. So you can hear that changes the tone a lot, brings out a lot of the noise and sort of the recording of it. Pretty substantial reverb on it. Round. Love this one. Native Instruments. I have some New York style compression, some parallel compression, really squashing it. Fab Filter Pro Q, a little more EQ over here, and then also a glue compressor just hitting the tops of those peaks. Okay, so that's the basics of how I got the piano tone on this track. And so if I go back and look at the actual track itself, there's 2 piano tracks. This one, so there's stereo left right, and then this one, stereo left right. So I'm going to solo those. So then this one comes in about halfway through and layers on top of it. So I'll start it here. You're going to be hearing both of those tracks now. Okay, and if I remember right, this one gets through the chord progression twice, and this one just once, I believe. And that same chord progression makes up all of this, which is the pads that happen in the background of the track throughout the whole thing. And I believe it maybe gets all the way through it once, or maybe doesn't even make it all the way through because it's moving so slow. So here's the original by itself. moving very slow. And, well, I'll talk about the instrument first. So I mock up a lot of ideas in Live, just using Live's built-in instruments. And I was surprised to find with this one that I actually loved the mock-up of it, what I created in Live, so much that I never took it to analog synths. I just used what was here in Live. So I used the operator, I think is one of their like built-in instrument racks that I just changed a little bit. And then, let's see now, I think the filter and reverb were already in there. Followed it up with a decapitator, which is a Soundtoys saturator / distortion monster. And I think it's working pretty subtly here. And then some EQ, and then a whole bunch of side chaining. Okay, and then, so after that, I have, I guess, 3 instances of the exact same MIDI information, but harmonized. So the first one is up an octave, the second one is up an octave and a fifth, and then the last one is up 2 octaves. They're all passing through a Valhalla delay, BBD, pretty characterful, really changing the tone, 100% on the mix. So we essentially have a fairly dry version of these pads happening up here, and then a highly affected, sort of washed out and harmonized upward version above it. So let's just hear the harmonized versions for a moment. Here it is without that delay. And delay back in. Valhalla delay is awesome, by the way. Highly recommended. And then down here, finally, I had a really subtle bass, just playing the bottom notes of this set of chords, and it's pretty quiet. I didn't want this track to be too bass heavy until the end. So it's just kind of grounding things, but honestly in the track you can barely hear it. Okay, so that's all the pads. Below this, we have a huge group of Lyra 8 takes. Lyra 8 is an awesome, crazy synthesizer. And so I did a ton of recording with it on top of the pads and the piano stuff. And if you're curious about how I worked with the Lyra over all of that stuff, I've got another video about the Lyra 8 that talks about basically exactly that process. But I did a ton of takes with this. You can see I have kind of a cemetery of unused takes sitting here. And I ended up using, yeah, it looks like 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 groupings of it. I recorded it in a way I like to record with a lot of my tracks, where I have the raw file on top, so that's the Lyra just going direct into my interface. Then I also split out the signal and passed it through a pedal. This is the dot chaser, a really cool delay, and recorded that fully wet. So we have a fully dry Lyra, fully wet dot chaser version of the Lyra sound. And then I split it out again to Ventris reverb. So here I have a fully wet stereo reverb of it. Let's see if we can hear these. So there's Lyra by itself. Here's what dot chaser was doing to it. And there's the reverb. So all three together sounds like that. I like to do it that way so that I can mix in live later on and have some flexibility. There can be, there are some instances where I actually prefer to just do it all together, just record it all with the effects and sort of commit to something. But for this case, I like to split it out. Okay, so the lyra got used in a bunch of different ways. That was the ending sound. That's what ends the track. And I knew fairly early on that I wanted to end the track with this. And needed to find a way to work it in earlier, so there's a bit of foreshadowing, so it wasn't just sort of a new character thrown in at the end. And so I ended up taking a sort of just the effects, apparently, another version of this same sound. I think I just chopped it and repitched it a bit and put it over here, which, let's see if you can, I think if I do this, be able to hear it. Yeah, so there's that sound earlier. It comes in kind of subtly with the piano note. Happens again here. Okay, but where the lyra really gets going is this whole ending section where it gets pretty huge. And so I knew once I had this particular sound, which I'll just play a bit of. I knew that that was going to be a big part of the track, and I wanted to build up to it and make it kind of the peak. And so I sort of created like a quasi-rhythm out of it, you can see here, and also harmonized it and put it up here. This is a lower version of it. And so in order to get to that, in order to build up to that, I took a bunch of lyra reverb and just general texture and created a build that was sort of connected to this. I think it might have been some of the resonance from this, and created sort of a reversed build into that. It was pretty long. It's all of this and all of this. So if I start here, you can hear it start to crescendo in, and then here it's getting a bit stronger. And eventually that builds all the way up to this part. And so, quick overview, that's basically it. That's basically everything. You have these pads, all the lyra stuff in various parts of the track building up to the huge stuff right around here. And then the two piano melodies, one coming in early and one coming in later on. And that's pretty much the whole track. So check it out. It's on Bitbird. You can find it on all the streaming sites, Bandcamp. Check me out on Instagram. Thanks so much for watching.